So my name is Piotr, as you know, and I have been many things, amongst others a Scrum Master right now, kind of an Agile coach. But what really is something that inspired me is systems thinking and then Kanban. Okay, who knows what Kanban is? Yeah, it's this board, right? You put stickies on it and you do a lot of stuff with it, right? I see nodding heads. I know you know exactly what I mean. And for some reason, some people say that Kanban should lead to continuous improvement. Anyone know what continuous improvement is? No. It's what?
It's a goal.
It's a goal. It's something. I'll try to share with you a part of my approach of how Kanban can help us with doing continuous improvement, basically. I won't do a lot of talking. I'm hoping you will do a lot of talking, and I'm hoping you'll do a lot of thinking during the next hour. We don't have like a lot of time, but you'll still have the opportunity to think for yourself, to talk in pairs, to talk in fours, and to talk out loud out here. And we'll have some discussions. Okay. At the end, I'll try to do a summary of everything. What's the inspiration for this talk? Was this kind of a workshop, right? The inspiration for this is some time ago I tried to use a simulation game called Featureban, right? It's a very nice simulation of how a Kanban system can work. And I decided to add a little minute detail to it. So I added the part where a team could not only make some moves, like move some work along the board, they could also buy some improvements. They could, buy those little shiny things which could help them with their work. And then I used Lady Luck to help me in simulating them using those improvements. If they scored less than the improvements they have, so 5% for each improvement, they would be unblocked, so their work would go faster, right? What surprised me at first is the first few teams which I played it with decided not to invest anything into those improvements. And it got me to think, what exactly is it that stops us from improving while we are using those beautiful Kanban systems, trying to limit work in progress, etc., right? So the first question of the day I would like to have for you guys, and I will need your attention, and this is an awkward moment when I will ask you to actually do some thinking and talking, is for you to think first for yourself, then talk in a pair, then team up in a group of four, to think about what is it we do or we could be doing that stops us from doing continuous improvement of any kind, of improving our work, right? What is it when we have a lot of work that stops us from doing improvement? Questions on how this is to be done? Okay. We'll have 3 rounds to this. We'll have round 1, when you'll have 1 minute to think for yourself. Then in round 2, you'll talk as a pair, and then you'll talk as a 4, right? Basically, the time for you starts right now. You have 1 minute for yourself. I'll tell you when. When I'm done, I'll raise my hand, and I'd like you to raise your hands too. Let's try this out. Yes, perfect, this works. So if this works, then right now you have a minute to think for yourself. The question is, what is it that stops us from doing improvements while we work? Okay, 1 minute for you guys. Okay, great, thank you. Team up, pair up with the second person, and discuss what you've thought about. This is where the buzz should start happening. You have 2 minutes for this one. That's enough talking. Now form groups of 4 and discuss what you've talked about in your 2 pairs. And you'll have another 4 minutes for this. So now is the time when I'd like to hear your answers to the question I've just asked you. So what stops us from doing continuous improvement? I believe there is this. Also, if anyone is on the stream, then probably you will be reading the statements from those people. But would anyone like to start? And would anyone, you have one? Okay, so Catch this. I have you have Coke in your hand, so. You're okay?
So when we have been discussing, I had one impression.
Yeah.
Excuses stops us.
Excuses.
Yeah.
Okay. Excuses.
And that's it. I mentioned few things, all excuses can be done in the different way.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you. Who's next? Toss it. Toss it. It's fun when you toss it. Yay.
I think that a lot of improvement was stopped because we don't record the start, don't record the finish, don't record the some task, and we don't have chance to measure it.
We don't measure. We don't.
Yes, but
visualize.
on the beginning we must start the record.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Anyone else? Woo!
Okay, so we have few things. First, we agree that the courage is something which stops us from developing the new things. The others, my main thing is that. I don't remember. Okay.
So courage and
No, not
Time, yes. And forget.
Yeah, we spoke about time. We
don't have
spoke
time.
about courage, but also. Yeah, I don't remember. Sorry. Main thing is.
Cool. So we don't have the courage. We don't have the time. This stops us, right?
We often try to improve other people, not starting from ourselves. And then it doesn't have effects as we expect. So we don't try to improve anymore.
If we try to improve others, we don't see the effects of that. We stop improving. If we don't have visible effects of something really, changing.
Another interesting thought has Pavel.
Me? Oh, nice to hear that. So I was talking about iterations. So we need to have a time to try our thoughts. So if we are making an experiment for 1 week, there will be no chance to catch this value. So we need to take time, 3 months or 3 weeks or 3 iterations, and after that we can find the solution.
So basically, use the time wisely and try it multiple times, right? Not just once. Okay.
What means also invest in time?
Invest. You need to invest the time. Yes.
So there's
exactly.
sometimes very difficult to find somebody who would like to sponsor it.
Exactly.
Depends how the model works, but.
Okay, cool. Anyone else?
We don't want to admit that there was a failure. Therefore, we can't learn from this failure.
Okay, learning from failures, right? We don't learn from them, from our failures. It's hard to admit them.
Okay, we also think that sometimes we are just lazy. Yeah.
We're people. We're
we
lazy.
think also that sometimes the reason is because we think the organization, the people above us, next to us, don't want to improve.
Right.
That there's a system, there is a work of way, and when people think they can't improve it. We also think that people live in the comfort zone. And they don't want to try anything else because why to do it? So it's something is working right now, so we don't need to start improvements. Okay, thanks.
If it's working, why fix the thing that isn't broken, right? Okay. Right. All interesting answers. I don't think Kanban would help with everything from those because most of some of those are deeply related to our internal world of being afraid of failing or finding excuses, right? But what I found Kanban can help with is what you guys have been saying about investing time, about experimenting multiple times. One of the things that happened during that simulation was I was a tricky bastard, so to get one of those, you had to invest 1 unit of your work, and you had 50% chance of actually getting one of those tokens, right? So getting an improvement. It wasn't obvious that you would get it. You didn't always get the improvement from your investment, right? Also, it's also tricky. The improvements were really small because one of those only gave you 5% chance of unblocking yourself. So what I've heard in the simulation was from some of the teams, as I've said, it's not worth improving. It's just too short a term, right? And I've been thinking about how Kanban as a system can work to help us with actually getting to the point when we know how to improve and we actually do it. Because you all know, I hope, that Kanban is not just this table, right? It's not just the columns and pushing post-its through the system, right? Or Jira tickets or whatever else. I would like to talk to you about one of the facets of a proper Kanban system, a facet called the six practices, right? You have the practices which are visualize, limit work in progress, manage flow, make policies explicit, implement feedback loops, improve collaboration collaboratively, and evolve experimentally, right? Those are the thick things in Kanban, which are kind of a built-in. If you're just using the table, you probably won't get the results that are given when you start to practice those things. Now comes the time when you'll have an opportunity to think, talk to your pair, talk and forth about how can those things actually help with you getting to improving, getting to know that you are improving and getting actual improvements through the system, based on what you've said also. So again, 1 minute for yourselves, 2 as a pair, 4 with a quadruple, let's say, and then we'll talk out here. Okay? So 1 minute for yourselves. Starting now. Find your couple, talk to them for the next 2 minutes. Find another couple, preferably not the one you've talked to the last time, and discuss it with them, with the task of figuring out how those actual policies help, right? So try to get at least one example for one of those. You'll have 4 minutes for this, okay? Choose a couple, another from this room, and discuss with them each of the six practices. Thank you a lot. What I'd like us to do now is to go one by one through each of those and have a couple of answers from you and a short summary from me, how you guys see it, how I see it, and when we go through the things, we can have a nice discussion at the end, right? What you've learned, etc. So let's start with the first one. Visualize. How can that help? Ooh, yeah, we have a taker.
So I think visualizing how far the entire flow will help us to better understand all the steps, because sometimes we could just forget about there is some approval needed or some testing and etc. And we could better understand where the bottlenecks. So if we see on the board that, there are 10 tickets when we regularly have 3 in the column, so maybe we have to focus on this this step instead of the other we thought it's a problem.
Exactly. So yeah, right. Understanding, trying to understand what you see, what you start to understand better, right? We are basically very stupid animals. What we don't see, we don't understand, right? Thanks.
Okay, so limit work in progress.
So we've gone to the second one already.
The first one.
Okay, so is that it?
So first or second?
First one still.
Okay, so first one. So I agree with my colleague, and moreover, you are able to visualize all the dependencies between the customer and the system, how it works, the whole flow. As you said, policies, but we have it later. Yeah,
Right.
and that's it. Commitments, points, etc. There is plenty of things to visualize, and it actually allows you to start improving from the starting point instead of let's catch everything.
Exactly. So I'll reiterate that it's about visualization is about understanding how you work, where you are, and not being in a void where there is multiple things to improve. If you visualize, you are able to see actually what's going on, and if you see it, you can change it, right? So 2, limit work in progress. Let's move to that one. And you wanted to talk about it, so. Okay.
Limit work in progress help us to concentrate on of the most important things. Because if we try do the 2 or more things in the same time, so we lose a lot of time to switching.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything else? You do. Let's toss the ball there.
Because in Kanban it is keep practice, which allow you to go from the push system to pull system. It is the only one practice. Because you assuming now pull. If we agree on the limits, I will not take work if I'm out of the limits. Depends on the class of service, of course.
So
but this is the only way.
So it helps you with basically decluttering the system and making sure you only take as much as you are able to, or your team takes as much as they are able to in here, right? So that's the second thing that's kind of important. I've noticed another thing that happens in teams that start limiting their work in progress. Suddenly people stop having things to do, and then they say, I don't have work, I don't have anything to work on, but there is work to be done, and what do I do with that? Well, the one thing that starts to get generated here is basically slack time. So you have some time spare to do something else, right? And it's actually, if you go to the third one later, it's actually can be beneficial for the system as a whole, not being busy. It starts to deal with the busyness. So it gives you also the time to think about something else, maybe about improvement also, right? And another thing I've also noticed is when you limit work in progress, suddenly when some piece of work is blocked, what do we do when a piece of work is usually when a piece of work is blocked?
Pick up something else.
Pick up something else, right? That's only natural. If you start limiting work in progress and you don't cheat by having a blocked column, you will start noticing the things that get blocked. And then you'll be faced with the challenge of actually looking at why am I getting blocked here? So that's a very insidious part of Kanban. If you put a blocked column in it, you won't see it at all, but it lets you see that you have places in which you are regularly blocked. And that's actually the system telling you, hey, you got to improve something in here, right? Talk to those guys maybe, somehow. Do something about it. Not just acknowledge I am blocked and that's it, right? Okay, 3, manage flow. What's flow? Oh, yeah, the flow of work, right? So we try to get a smooth flowing system. How can that help?
The idea is we can differentiate the type of work we are doing. So if, for example, this task we deliver something new, some new functionality, or we're just, for example, fixing bugs and etc. Okay. So maybe in our thoughts, like, okay, it's task and we have to work that. But in real life, the process for those two types of tasks will be different. So better understanding and differentiating of those tasks could, like, for example, improve the speed for bug fixes, or to better understand how it should go through the entire board.
So what you're basically saying is you have different, what Kanban calls classes of service, right? So different things handled in different ways. And you might start noticing that they have something special in common. They are somehow different, right? Maybe that gives you an opportunity to improve. That's one of the things that can happen. Actually, the 3 is, in my mind, is tightly linked to 2. If you want to manage flow, you focus on getting things through the system faster and faster. You will have to notice that you are getting blocked somewhere. What is blocking you? What is the obstacle? What are your impediments, Scrum Masters, right? It comes together very nicely because if you want this system to flow smoothly, you will figure out that there are things which are stopping you, like reefs in a river, right? Stones in a river. You will notice them, and you'll have to remove them to go faster, to move through the system faster. So that one was a toughie. How about 4? What can happen if you make policies explicit? So you write down the policies. I think Jurek was first.
Okay, so for example, I can introduce the policy that when I take the task, so I just enter the date of the day of the date and an hour. So then, excuse me. So then we start recording the data, and the same when I will done the task. So it's just the starting of the having the data for the improvements.
Okay, start having the data by establishing a firm policy of writing down the data. Naturally, right?
I was thinking about explicit. Everybody it's very good when everybody knows the rules. Yeah, when you are making, for example, some experiment and everybody is committed to these rules, then we have no excuses.
Right.
That comes back about to this guy. And it's very easy answer, and somebody is making some effort and he's going to tell us, oh, that's better, I don't want to do that. So we've got a contract on the wall, and we made this together, and everybody knows the rules. So it's easier. There are no questions.
It's easier, exactly. Plus, if you make an experiment, usually it's easier to say, okay, we'll change this rule as an experiment. We'll change this thing we're doing, and we expect this and this to happen. It's easier to establish some scientific thinking that way, right? Because if you don't have any policies and you say, we'll change something to something, you don't really know if people understand it the same way. So making policies explicit is one of those things. Another thing that was part of the workshops I've been doing, the improve workshops, the simulations. Again, once people started having those improvements, I told them, okay, fine, you've got those, but you can also spend some of those and change a rule I've made for you in the game, which was making their life harder. And I've specified a few things that they could change. A lot of teams afterwards said, those little rocks were useless, but when you told us we could change the rules of the game, then we started making actual progress. Because, for example, we didn't have to assign ourselves to a ticket or something. It required us to get rid of some of the improvements we've already had, because every change costs you, but then we've changed the system a lot, right? So if you make the rules that govern your flow explicit, you discuss them, you can actually talk about them and how to change them, you can change the way the work works, basically. It's the way that the work flows, the way people interact together, right? It's much easier that way, other than swimming around in the murky waters of unknown policies, right? Where you don't know what you're changing actually, and how will it come back to kick you in the ass, right? And maybe you don't need certain things. When you make policies explicit, you figure out, okay, but point A and point C are practically the same, plus we are doing something that we shouldn't be doing at all because nobody needs it, right? Why are we writing documentation for a team that stopped existing 5 years ago? We should be doing something else instead, some different kind of documentation, for example. Okay, number 5, implement feedback loops. Ooh. What's a feedback loop, basically?
That's my favorite, actually.
Mine too.
Sorry? That's my favorite because when I am describing the thing, asking for feedback, it makes things real. I can see it, I can understand it better. And in the next step, when we are talking about feedback, it's the start of measuring things, it's the start of gathering data. So I think it's better, it's a good start for a first step to real change, something like that.
Okay, cool.
Oh,
Getting feedback, getting the opportunity for feedback.
For me, it's just to reflect what I did and think
yeah.
about that. Then I might come up to some decision to do it next time a bit differently. To see.
Right, inspect and adapt.
Yeah.
Some people could have heard the words inspect and adapt, or like Scrum Masters. I'm looking at you guys. Yeah, exactly. If you implement an explicit feedback loop and you know what's happening, and how, then you know how you could change your behavior. And for example, Scrum comes in with a lot of those feedback loops built in. And I'm talking about Kanban, and I'm talking about Scrum because they are not something different for me. Scrum has a very particular implementation of feedback loops. It has a sprint review, where you review what has been done, so inspect what has been done, and what the product, how it works, what kind of value it generates on the market, and you have the opportunity to adapt it. So it's a feedback loop about the product, about the market, about the business environment, whatnot. And you have the retrospective, which is about the team, inspecting and adapting itself. So another built-in feedback loop, which is supposed to give you the opportunity to reflect and to change the way you work. When you have explicit policies and you try to limit work in progress, and all that really helps. But if you don't do this one, you don't have a feedback loop, you don't know what kind of a change you want to actually achieve by the things you're changing, right? Woo! Okay, let's go.
One is, convince me that Kanban is better than Scrum for development.
I just said they are not perpendicular. They can easily complement each other. They are meant for very different things. So I don't see them as anything different and one being better than the other. You can take a look at the work that has been done with Scrum with Kanban. Actually, I've been one of the translators of the Scrum with Kanban guide into Polish, so I kind of know what I mean. They are not different things. They are somewhat different implementations, but if you take a look at it, Scrum with the heart of Kanban is the perfect world for me, at least.
And the second, how to start with those 6 rules, one by one or everything at once?
It all forms the complete system. If you take one of those, maybe you'll get some results, but I would advise you to try to do all of those. It's not that hard. Just start talking about, what work you have in progress. Start visualizing. Start looking at how many items you can process, and discuss your policies. So I think all those 6 go together if you want to actually have a working, functioning Kanban system. I hope that helps. And I've nodded to Eva when she said that implement feedback loops is one of her favorites, but actually mine is the 6. That's the one I like most. Improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally. Anyone? Ideas? How can that help?
Okay, so one of the problems to your previous question was that I was afraid of doing the improvement because I was alone in doing the improvement. So now if I will have the team or at least some colleagues, so then it will be much easier to start with the improvement and to finish it.
Changing with others is much easier when everyone is in the same boat. Yeah, we know where we're going, right?
I have questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's your favorite. Why?
Why is this my favorite? I was looking for a couple of more answers, and I will answer that question naturally.
Right, so for me, it just summarizes all what has been said. Because if we are changing anything, especially the flow, the process, it is continuous. So it doesn't stop at any specific moment. So if we are going into direction, chosen direction, or change direction, it is continuous work. So we need to improve and we need to evolve to be still there and going where we want to go, or just change it. So it is for me about all what we said. Okay, we are visualizing, but if we are not improving, what then? Yeah, if we are not evolving as a company, as a individuals, as a team players, what then? Yeah, so.
Cool. Yes, you can. Go ahead.
I believe that in the flow we have got a lot of dependencies. If we will improve one area and others not, that we will end up with some bottlenecks. And that's also the thing to consider
collaborative work. Yes. If anyone, I think I would like to latch on to this one. I think this is why I think this one is the most important for me myself. It's not only about not being alone in the process of changes, because it is important, but I've said at the beginning I'm a fan of systems thinking and Kanban. And in systems thinking, what you have is, when you have a single system working, you can optimize that system. But if the system is part of a bigger system, then if you optimize that little part, you can be actually breaking something in the bigger system. So when you have yourself, if you optimize for yourself, it's very different from when you optimize for working in a team. But then think, to actually generate some kind of more value, maybe you have to work, you could work with more than one team, like 2, 4, 5 teams. And you have to somehow collaborate and discuss and optimize, not just the single team working well, but the whole system of teams working well. And then you can think of the organizations which we work in. They're also another kind of a system which works very differently. If we just optimize for the teams delivering software, it might be very different an optimization, or actually a sub-optimization, versus what we can actually achieve if we try to optimize for being a great organization as a whole. Naturally, you can go upwards from there and talk about, organization being part of a country or the global economy, or etc. Right? But this basically generates that each of the parts, if you start thinking about collaboration, about working together, starts being a part of a bigger whole. And if we start working for that bigger whole, we figure out that our individual contribution to that bigger whole is much bigger with much less effort than we thought previously needed. So that part where we improve collaboratively, try to work together to get the optimum for the bigger system is something that's at the heart of Kanban for me. And evolve experimentally, well, because if every time we change something, we generate different changes for the whole system. So we need to be careful about how the effects of our optimization affect the system as a whole, right? That's basically why that's the most important part for me. Okay. I think I'm kind of done with that, those 6 little points. Now it's a good time for you to ask questions, maybe get some answers from me or somebody else.
How to start with setting some limits?
How do we start with?
How to start
it? If you've already visualized your work, just put a number on it and start. And then improve collaboratively and, evolve experimentally, try something out, see what change it causes.
What factors probably I should consider to set those limits?
Number of people, their skills, whatever.
Talk to the people, maybe. Yeah, that's why I say collaboratively, because each team will have a different optimum at which it operates well right now. You might start with something, figure out, just take a look at how we work together. If you started managing the flow, so collecting the data, making policies explicit, so describing how the work works, what kind of results you want to achieve, And you can start talking about how those limits affect your actual work and what kind of effects you have. So I won't give you an answer for this, other than start with something that everyone is kind of okay with, and evolve from there.
I could try to answer to your question, because in one book I read that 1.5 per person is rather good limit if you are you don't know what to start with, and your team don't know what to start with. And I have some experience with this, and one team I work with decided that the limit will be 5 per one person, and we checked that it is too much, and they still said that we have too many things to do. We have still mess in it. Yeah, we tried that 5 is too big.
Okay, I have a question about the second thing, the limit VIP. How to start work with this point, with the people that always say that we can't complete task. We have to get something from somebody to complete our thing. That in big organizations, the people like not in the bubble. They need input, they produce output, and the process rolls.
Mm-hmm. So they are part of a bigger ecosystem, right? So one thing you might try is to improve collaboratively. So if you have other parts which you're dependent on, maybe try to talk to them. That's one of the things that might work. The limit working process will show you where you have problems. Now the solution remains for you to be found, basically, right? You will start seeing what obstacles you have in your way, where you get blocked, right? No simple solutions there, I guess. But again, if you're part of a larger ecosystem, then it's not the team is probably not alone in wanting to be better, right? So sometimes it's about implementing a feedback loop, so doing some kind of a retrospective with the dependent team, or talking to them, basically. Figuring out the kind of connection which will help you figure out what exactly is happening in there, and untangling that little knot somehow, right?
Eventually, they will be just part of your process. Yeah. So it's good that you have this awareness, and once blocker become the part of the process. So it's good, because it is not blocker after a few months. It is just part of the process. You know how to do it. You have explicit you have clear policies for this one.
I have a comment about the WIP limits. If you put the WIP limits too high and you don't feel the pain, that means you don't see the blocker. Because if you have the low WIP limits, then you don't take new things when you don't finish. The Kanban help the finish task as quick as possible. Then if you have big WIP limits, then the Kanban don't help you.
Mm-hmm. I like that one. If you don't feel the pain of it, that means it's not working, basically.
You mentioned Scrum.
I did.
And the fundament is transparency.
Mm-hmm.
In Kanban, I had a lot of problems with transparency when people try to visualize how they want things to be instead of how the things are. Can you comment on this?
That never happened to anyone. No, it's human nature. It's not easy to to visualize something, to actually start feeling that pain of improvement unless you know why you're doing it. It can be tough for a team to actually come to terms with the fact that some of the things they are doing would need to change, right? Would need to be different somehow, because the way we work, we want to think about ourselves. It's kind of ego protection, right? We want to think of ourselves in a positive way, and if we start seeing that things we are doing aren't working, and we tend to associate what we are doing with who we are, it can be very, 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 very hard. So, you know, it's not uncommon. It's not. You can have a lot of intransparency in Scrum too, right? I believe I don't recall what exactly the Kanban values are, but you know, bits and pieces of it also tell us about the part that one of the things we need is understanding how our work works. We need some respect for each other, and we need to learn that. That's hard stuff. That soft stuff is very hard, basically. So
this first principle of Kanban is saying start with what you have now, and there is some extension, like understand current processes and agree on current processes, and only then try to improve it.
Yeah.
I understand, but I'm talking about safety here, about visualizing things, and then we have this man looking and says, "Come on, I've heard about green grass in your slide yesterday, and then day before yesterday, and now are you doing this and only this? Why?" Yeah, so that's the problem. That's the culture problem.
It can be a culture problem, but it will be the same problem in Scrum and in Kanban because it's the same people. It's yeah. So yes, one of the prerequisites is kind of an environment which promotes the safety and the fact that painting grass green is not the required behavior. Quite the opposite. We want to see the flaws. That's why in the Toyota production system in the factories, the management is worried when the amount of end-on pulls, the amount of stopping the line drops, right? Because they want the line to be stopped whenever there is an issue. It's not about painting the grass green. We want to know when there are problems because only then can we fix them, right? But it is a cultural thing, right?
I inquire about going step by step with those rules, because in my experience, visualizing things, real things as they are, takes time. And step number 2 and 3 and go on are worthless without true in the step 1.
Yes, but as it was said, it is about starting where you are. Often you are in a place that's not really transparent, and working your way from there is a journey.
Inspecting and adapting, not transparent things.
Well, we create transparency for ourselves when we know that it's needed and why we need it. So I think it's about a learning process. Going through that and learning that it's actually okay to show things as they are. And it's not simple. That's it, I guess. Okay. Thank you everyone. I hope you got something from this.